Right. So welcome everyone. Today is the official book launch of the Outlanders, the hidden narratives from social workers of color. I've got my book right here. Hopefully I'm not hiding away. I hope you can see it. I can see other people's got their books. I absolutely adore this book. And I think it's something that's really special. And it's something that everyone needs to have for sure, that's for sure. So today we're joined by a few of the authors who contributed to the book, but we're also joined by Siobhan and we're joined by Wayne, who were the editors. And I think it would be great to hear a few words from them, and we will. But if we move on to the next slide, I want to talk about how the book has been perceived on social media. So as you can see, here are a few tweets that I collected on social media talking about, you know, how they feel about the book, what it's bringing and what it can bring in the future. As I always say, I think this book is so perfect because of the diversity and because of the truth and honesty that's within it. It can be given to everyone, and it can provide insight to everyone. And I think that's important. So I wanted to highlight that because it's amazing. So if you are on Twitter or any other type of social media, please reach out, tweet us, and tell us what you think about the book, and tell us you're going to buy the book, because I think you should. Okay, can we go on to the next slide, please? Okay, so now I'm going to hand it over to our editors, Siobhan and Wayne. Please take it away and introduce this baby of yours.
When you put it like that, Siobhan, when you put it like that, Diana, it nearly wrong-footed me, to be honest. I'm glad my wife's not here. Siobhan, I'll let you go first.
Okay. I hadn't thought about that at all when you said that, the baby, and I was like, oh yes, the baby of the book. Well, I just want to say, I suppose, start off by saying I think it's I'm so excited about tonight. It's World Social Work Day. I am absolutely exhausted, as I imagine most social workers all over the country are at the end of World Social Work Day, a hugely busy day for all of us, but really excited for the book launch tonight. I've seen a couple of questions already in the chat and I'm trying to keep up. One of the things somebody said is, do we have a hashtag for the event? I think we could hashtag Outlanders. I think that would be great, but also hashtag World Social Work Day 2021. So just WSWD 21, because from my perspective, you know, the theme for World Social Work Day this year is Ubuntu. And I know there's been lots of things going on Twitter. I've seen Shabnam, who's here tonight, has been tweeting as well, all of the 14 principles of Ubuntu through the day. But for me, this book is Ubuntu through and through. It gives Ubuntu more than anything else that I've ever seen in social work. I am incredibly proud of what we've pulled together. I'm incredibly humbled by just being able to be involved in the book. This is something that I wanted to do a couple of years ago, and if you've already got the book, you'll read in the beginning about how it came to be. And I had a vision for the book, a bit of an idea, but I never thought that it would come out in the way that it's come out. It is and it's been described by so many people as a beautiful book. And I honestly think that's what it is. In so many ways, this is a beautiful book in social work. I think it's one of those books that if you're a student, it's one of those books you could pick up for every single essay you're doing and find a quotation in there, because there's something about everything in social work in this book. It's very contemporary. I think I saw somebody the other day describe this as a now book, and it really is a here and now book. For me, this book gives us the past, the present, and the future of social work. And every single contribution brings something else, something unique, something different. When we were talking before we opened it, I think it was Chris who said, I'm reading it in parts and I almost don't want to finish it. And I think that is something to say about this book. It's you want to read each individual contribution and you don't want to finish it. I remember towards the end, and I think at the end of tonight, we're going to just show you a couple of photos of the process of putting this book together. But I remember trying to get it all together and off to print towards the end, and literally sitting and reading each piece so many times to think, where should it go? Where should it sit? But almost in some ways, as an editor, not wanting to finish it, because the process was so empowering and I learned such a lot from it, and I felt so humbled by being able to be involved in editing this book. So I would like to say thank you to every single contributor to the book, and I know we've got many of them on camera today. What we did actually was Diana said I'll host the night, which is fabulous. It's great to have a social work student, a future social worker, hosting tonight, and Diana's such a great host and so good at conversations, and so she's going to take us through a range of conversations about her thoughts on reading the book, as well as being a contributor to the book as well, Diana. But you're going to take us through a series of conversations, aren't you? And I'm going to sit back and really enjoy the night. So I don't know fully what we've got planned, but Diana's going to take us through it. But I'll hand over, I think, to Wayne as co-editor. We did work together on this. It took a lot of collaboration, but I think it was a really interesting collaboration, one I learned a lot from, one I really enjoyed working with Wayne on. So I'll hand over to you, Wayne, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Just getting over discovering that I've got another baby, really. Yeah, but it has been a real labor of love as well, to say that. You know, the editing process, as you said, you know, it was sort of, you know, pleasure really in many ways, reading people's work, getting insight into their life experiences, both personally and professionally, and looking at just how creative, you know, social workers can be. So yeah, it's been a real pleasure. And in our sort of tech test meeting we had just before this, I was saying that, you know, kind of it's just been a real pleasure really working with everybody on this project, and I'm sure it's something that will outlive all of us, hopefully, and will be a kind of reference point for social workers now and in the future. The image that you've got in front of you, I think, is a kind of visual representation of what I'd put in the blurb. I think it was the blurb, possibly the preface, about this being a patchwork of different people's ideas, their lived experiences. We tried to not confine people with any sort of rules or guidelines, just allow them really to express themselves in whatever medium was comfortable for them. So I'm really pleased with the end product, and I'm glad that it's getting the reception and appreciation that I feel it deserves. So yeah, I'm really grateful to all the contributors, and thank you for all your hard work and input. And I hope to collaborate with you again in the future. Over to you, Diana.
Thanks, Wayne. Can I just, sorry, Diana, can I just say, it was Diana that put this slide together, I think, based on, as you said, Wayne, in your preface, you described it as a patchwork. And then in mine, I think I took the idea of the patchwork and what was the golden thread that ran between all of the narratives. So I think this is actually a really nice image slide that Diana's put together there. So just to kind of appreciate that Diana's obviously read both of the prefaces and pulled this together based around that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think it's great to be able to hear from the editors, because they were able to see the process. But I guess being able to actually read the book when I got it was an experience in itself, and like being able to dissect it and look at what each chapter meant to me, because all of them meant different things to me. And I think that was the most exciting thing. And I guess what I really want to do is start off this event with a poem from...
Fine. So yeah, I'm going to narrate for you my poem. It's called The Forced Silence. In the book, there is a link to the video as well that you can watch. Okay. What's the difference between you and I? The difference you state is all a lie. Are not we all the same inside? But it's me you don't sit beside. A stare, a look, a horrid glare. I see it, I feel it. You don't care. And if I shout about my pain, then all of us have lots to gain. But instead, you shut me down and tell me just to stop my frown. You call me angry, a troublemaker. Get over it, you're just a faker. Now here I am, all alone, exposed and isolated, it's all shown. So don't speak out and use your voice. I'm too afraid, I have no choice. Be quiet, be silent, enforce the silence. Enforcers will ensure compliance.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was powerful when I was reading it, but listening to you say it is not even say it, perform it, but also I feel like we can feel that you've lived it, and I think that's the most beautiful thing. Even though it's so painful, what I got from that was the pain, the silence, and it was something that I've connected to and that I've experienced. But how did you come about writing that poem?
It actually, I suppose it's feelings that you've got locked away that somehow come out in an expressive and a creative way. And a colleague of mine that I work with actually produced a film where he epitomized the everyday microaggressions and experiences of racial discrimination for a young Black male student at a university. And after watching it, I felt so moved after seeing his experience and kind of reliving my own, that I just felt I had to put pen to paper and really put it all out there. And then I just drafted this theoretical model, which I call the forced silence, which I use in other forms of literature and training and so on. But it's really embodied in this poem.
Thank you, thank you. And I can see the comments in the chat as well. They're talking about how beautiful and how powerful that piece is. And truly, it was something that stood out to me. Thank you for being here to read it. So moving on, I think that was a great introduction to the event. And I think now what we're going to do is move on to the first group that we're going to interview, which is Zoe, Sharifa, and Shabnam. Now, you might end up picking up the reason why I grouped these guys together, but essentially the main theme here is belonging and the lack of belonging that we tend to feel as minorities in society. But please, could you introduce yourselves? Starting off with Zoe, please.
Hi, thanks, Diana. I just want to say the poem, Syra, I've read it and I've read it. We know each other personally and I know about the poem, but to just see you perform it like that, I was almost close to tears. I really felt your pain and it was really beautifully performed. Sorry, I just had to say that. Yeah, I'm Zoe Thomas. I'm a lecturer in social work at the University of Bradford. I'm also a PhD researcher, just coming towards the end of my PhD, and I'm under supervision at the University of Huddersfield.
Thank you. Sharifa, please may you introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, I second all that Zoe mentioned, other than I don't know Syra personally. It was a beautiful poem to hear, have read live. It was a real pleasure to hear. My name is Sharif Rademosan. I'm an IRO. I am really honoured to be part of this great body of work. And yeah, I'm just here to take part in the book launch and just meet everybody else and find out more about the inspiration for the book.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And then we have Shabnam. Please, could you introduce yourself? Shabnam?
Sorry, just give Shabnam a second. She should be coming on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Brilliant. My name is Nam Ahmed. I'm a social worker and a team manager in the London Borough of Camden. I'm also a trainer. I am also doing my doctorate in social work at UEL. And I am really excited and I'm just so humbled and pleased to be part of this project. Really, yeah, really flattered and honoured. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you for coming. So to kick this off, I did say that the main theme here is belonging. And I think the fact that we're starting off with belonging sounds pretty right with the way that we're living currently in society. But Zoe, your submission to the book was called Am I in the Right Place? And I think the title itself is absolutely powerful. But I guess one of the things that I picked out was a certain quote, and essentially the lack of belonging and the apparent process of othering is very evident in your submission. The quote that stood out to me most was, I entered a sterile world of emotional disconnect, privileged disinterest, white denial, the protection of fragile white feelings with a dose of insincere apologetic smiles of apathy and a few sympathetic nods. That summed up my whole life. And it was just, your whole essay was amazing, but that stood out to me. And I just wanted to kind of figure out, what was your thought process when you were writing this? You spoke about rebelling, so I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Diana. That's a good question. And when you say that out loud, it just it makes me laugh. I was writing it with a little bit of humour as well, because obviously we have to find the humour in some of the horrendously tragic experiences we have to overcome from day to day. But just, yeah, the title of the piece, Are You Sure You're in the Right Place? I think I should know that, shouldn't I? It's actually something that somebody said to me when I walked into a room. I was looking for a room because we were doing clearing. So I walked in the room and just said, is this where clearing is happening? And the man that kind of welcomed me into the room, he just couldn't believe that I'd walked in or why I'd walked in, and he just assumed that I was in the wrong place, and he questioned me about whether I was in the right place or not. I was in the right place. I'm not always in the right place, but I definitely was then. But yeah, so that particular quote, Diana, it does illustrate my experience, both professionally, personally and politically, my experience as a Black woman. And it's not really so much a lack of belonging, because I absolutely do belong in academia, and I absolutely do belong working as a social work academic in higher education. You know, I've worked really, really hard to make a professional choice to become an academic. It's something that I want to do, and I absolutely am entitled to be there. I think it's more around whether other people think I belong there or not. That's the kind of the difficulty, really. So I suppose what was going through my head when I wrote that piece was, it was more about the anthology, I have to say. Just the invitation or the possibility to be invited to write a piece for this anthology gave me, you know, the permission and authority and respect and honoured space to talk in my authentic voice. And this is what came out, really. It felt safe to do so. The anthology, even in the really early stages, you know, before I even realised how fantastic it was going to be, or before I even realised who the other fantastic authors were going to be, what it would look like, how it would come across, just the actual idea of this community of creative work, that was my inspiration for just writing the whole piece, really, and in particular being so open about my day-to-day experiences, because nobody's ever asked before. So I just answered.
Thank you. Thank you for answering. I definitely feel like there needs to be more opportunities for our voices to be heard, because as you said, we have a right to be there. We shouldn't feel like, you know, that we shouldn't have a right to be there. And I guess that's what's so powerful about your essay and powerful about everything that you just said. And I kind of wanted to go on to Shabnam next, because I found your submissions really amazing. And you did submit quite a few, but I think, you know, you were speaking about finding your brave and finding your voice. And I guess the same way I asked Zoe about how did she get to this point where she wrote this submission, Could you give us some insight on how you were able to find your brave as a woman of color?
Yes, sure. Can you hear me okay? Because I can't unmute. Am
Yes,
I?
I can
Yeah,
hear you.
brilliant, brilliant. To be honest with you, it was the year 2020. And, you know, I actually refer to it as a period of wintering. And I'm a huge fan of the writings of Maria Popova and her journal Brain Pickings. And I came across the term wintering from her writings she shares, and I feel it's really apt and a really good metaphor to describe my journey to finding my brave. So wintering is described as a wisdom which emerges from a period of sadness, and 2020 felt quite sad. And what is said about wintering is that since childhood, we're kind of taught to ignore sadness and pretend it's not there. And then as adults, we often have to learn to hear the clarity of its call, and that's wintering. It's the kind of the courage to stare down some of the worst parts of our experiences and commit to healing them the best we can. So wintering for me in 2020 became a moment of intuition. And I felt I really experienced this, and what connected me to this were three things, and I mentioned this in my contributions to finding my brave. And the first one was my reflective journals that I've written since I was a social work student. The second was the pandemic, and the third was the murder of George Floyd. And these three things really, really connected for me. And I started, as you said, to think about belonging in space. You know, I really started to see things and think about what spaces were people from Black and ethnic minorities allowed to occupy. I thought about myself. Why had it taken me so long to be in some of the places I wanted to be in? And I also thought about all the people who enabled and enhanced my visibility. I mean, I see them. I see those allies. I really do. So, Diane, in my story, I share some of my experience, which revealed themselves in this period of wintering. And I think being surrounded by the theme of breath, it really moved me to think about how I wanted to utilize my breath whilst I still had it. And at that moment, I made that decision. The moment I made that decision, Diane, unexpected opportunities came my way. I became a member of Wayne Reed's Black and Ethnic Minority Professional Symposium, an amazing group. Siobhan and the Student Connect team, yourself, invited me to share my supervision model, the 6 R's for supervision. And these moments of encouragement, you know, which I hadn't really had before, further lifted me and really moved me towards finally launching my educational YouTube channel, The School of Shabs, you know, a dream I'd kind of silenced for years. So I think I remember reading it in the book, someone used the word woke, and I thought, yes. So 2020 feels like the year I woke, really, just recognizing what I had been doing. For example, sometimes shrinking myself, and at other times working twice as hard to be noticed. And I think that really gave me the push to do the opposite, to represent, to amplify not only my voice, but the voice of people of color who are underrepresented and in the spaces that actually belong to everyone. So Diane, that's kind of a little bit of a journey into me finding my brave.
Thank you. Thank you. I think when I read your submission, I thought about my own journey and how I can find my own brave. And I guess, you know, the way that you were able to reflect and take us on a journey within this book is something that people do need to experience. And you know what? That idea of, you know, finding your brave and making sure that, you know, you feel that you belong and you know that you belong links so well with what Zoe was talking about in her essay, and it also links in with the rebellion of Zoe's essay and what she was saying about, you know, we need to continue this fight and that we will continue this fight. And I think that's the beauty of it. And I guess with the link with reflection, next I want to talk with Sharifa. Reflection is a key part of our social work world. It really allows for self-growth. Sharifa, you shared with us your reflections about being an IRO and how COVID has affected practice. You touched on the importance of human contact and connection. Could you give us more insight on why you think it's needed in our current times? And do you think it could help cultivate a sense of belonging?
Yeah, thank you, Diana. I think that my first section that I'd written was A Day in the Life of the IRO. I actually wrote that piece on a train journey that was a 4.5, 5 hours journey to visit a child who was in North Wales. It was on that day that I realised that North Wales was nowhere near Cardiff and that it was actually quite some distance away. I actually was able to reflect on how much we used to go to lengths in order to see children and young people wherever they might have been prior to COVID. I also had the situation where I then was able to reflect in September 2020, which is when I actually did the second part of human contact. I mean, all the news was telling us, all that we were reading in social media was about people just wanting that human connection, the human touch. And I felt that somewhere along the line, that seemed to have been lost when it came to looked after children. And I think anyone that knows me knows that I'm passionate about working with looked after children. I have always been. And I felt I needed to be a voice for that. So what I found, Diana, within my local authority was that you did have some social workers who would go over and above to see children during COVID, which was a lonely time, as Shabnam has just described, in terms of wintering and that just feeling away and apart from everything that was normal. So I then began to question, actually, when lockdown started to ease, we all were so pleased to be able to see some of our loved ones in the garden, or to be able to, I think the months I'm thinking about are probably between August and I'd say October, sort of November time. And I started to query that, you know, why were some of our children not being seen? You know, we as corporate parents have a responsibility for our children, not just when it's there to wield authority. Actually, I might want to have ice cream with my 9-year-old boy in the garden that's 5 hours away. Or I might want to just have a chat with a teenager who's not seen anybody, who doesn't have contact in terms of family contact. And it just made me think about the importance of our role in terms of the message we give to children. You know, they're valuable. Just the same way I wanted to see my mum after months of being disconnected from her. I couldn't wait to stand on her porch and chat to her. I didn't understand why I was meeting people who were saying, oh no, still doing virtual. I didn't understand that. And the local authority I work for, I mean, I've met social workers who did doorstep visits just to make sure the children were getting that message that they were important. And it's quite a key thing in my local authority about seeing children. That was my inspiration, the looked after children that I sort of oversee and monitor as their IRO.
Thank you so much. I think when I read your submission, I didn't know a lot about a independent reviewing officer. So I guess as a student, I was reading it as someone who was taking in new information on a different level. And I was just kind of like, oh, wow, okay, this is a different side of social work that I haven't really looked at. And I guess the way that you were able to kind of take us along your reflection and really link it back to the humane things about life, you know, connecting with people. I think that was the most beautiful part, because we tend to forget that, or sometimes, you know, we might be selfish in our way of thought and forget what the service user or the people with lived experience may be feeling or may be needing. And I think that was what was so amazing about your submission and what I really took away from it. So thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to all three of you. I absolutely adored your submissions. And I think even though we haven't went into deep detail about your submissions individually, I think pick up the book, read it, because it's an experience in itself, and you will only be able to experience it if it's in your hands. Truly, I feel like it's something that needs to be experienced by yourself or with people, but definitely get the book. I think it's something that you definitely need to do. So thank you, Shabnam, Sharifa, and Zoe. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana.
Thanks. So next, we are going to move on to a bit of music. which might sound a bit weird. You're like, oh wait, where did the music come from? But I guess if you do read the book or you have read it already, there was a few submissions that did talk about, you know, the importance of music and how it does link to social work. And I think for me, we're going to start off with a drumming video. And this video was from Brent Singh. And for me, his submission connected to me because I've always been a believer of the idea that music heals the soul. And I guess that pretty much links with social work, doesn't it? So yeah, can we please have that? The comments, and it's absolutely great. I think someone said that it's the type of music that you'd meditate to, and I completely agree. But just a little information about Brent Singh. He is a social worker and a community musician, and he's at his happiest when he's combining both of them. And I think, you know what, why not do something that you love, and do it with something else that you love. So I really enjoyed that piece, and I hope you also did. Next, we're going to have Ella introduce her music piece that we're going to listen to, and she'll provide us with some insight of how this impacts her, but also how it relates to social work. So take it away, please.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Well, gospel singing, when I think of gospel music, I think of family, community, love, joy. And music is about creating a mood, lifting up spirits, and it allows oneself to reflect and just to listen and respond accordingly. And no matter what country you're from, no matter what language you speak, no matter the color of your skin, music is one, and it kind of just unites everybody. And I liken that to social work, you know, being able to reach different communities and looking at, you know, with the lens of hope, you know, and now lately it has been about strength-based approach and just looking at those strengths and how we can, you know, illuminate them, how we can lift people that we're working with. And I think there's a real connection with music and social work about bringing the best out of people. So I hope you enjoy the pieces we have to get. One is Rise Up, giving hope to people, and the other one is Joyful, Joyful, because it's time to be joyful. So
this is you at your own graduation, I think, Ella. So this is the one I've got to go first here.
Ella and Daisy Vey Candy.
Please welcome the De Montfort University Gospel Choir.
You're broken down and tired. I'm living life on a merry-go-round, and you can find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we go walk it out. Mountains, we go walk it out and move. Mountains, and I rise up, I rise with the day, I rise up, I rise with the faith, I rise up, and I rise up,
That was absolutely amazing. And the chat is completely going wild with just comments about how beautiful, how spectacular, and how the music really does, like music really does connect people, and it's a way of communication. And I think that's what we're getting. It's okay. It's okay. But Omar will put the links in the chat so that you can listen to both of Ella's videos on YouTube. They're absolutely amazing. And I think, as everyone was saying, the way that it connects shows that there's beauty in struggle a lot of the times, and we will continue to rise up. Moving on, I'm going to be talking with Winnie, Rachel, and Amina. I loved all of your submissions separately, but I guess what I was really picking up on when I was looking at all of them and I was reading them and dissecting them was just the idea of identity and the way that your own identity can be, you know, broken down or lifted up by those around us, how your identity can impact yourself and how you feel, and how people treat you because of your identity. I think that was what I was getting from it. But could we just start off with some introductions? Winnie, please could you introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Winnie Lawanda. I'm a children and family social worker in a local authority in Scotland. I am very proud to be part of the anthology. I think just like the amazing choir we've just heard, there is unity and power in the collective voice and that feeling of not being so alone in your experience.
Thank you, thank you. Next, Amina, please may you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Diana. Hi, everybody. I'm Amina Akhtar. I'm the Regional Engagement Lead for Social Work England, and I cover Yorkshire and the Humber. Very much agree with what Winnie said. Absolutely believe that this anthology is very needed, and particularly at the moment, but I think there's been lots of voices of people of colour missing for a long time, and to see them compiled in such a beautiful way is really moving. I've only read some of it, got very emotional at points reading some of it, so I think it's definitely one that you will have to dip in and out of, but I truly believe there will be one that will be a part of my journey for the rest of my life, and I hope that it is for everybody else as well. Really want to speak to what you said, Diana, about some of the really powerful comments that people have made on Twitter, and I think it's already starting to have a really strong impact, which is great to see.
I completely agree. Thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself. Next, can we have Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachel Pearce and I'm a supervising social worker based in Wiltshire. I just feel really privileged to be a part of this anthology, and just hope that it is going to be used for years to come. I think it's really powerful. I'm just really, really pleased that there's a lot of students being a part of this project really as well.
Thank you, thank you. And I guess this anthology is made up of different stories, essays, poems, and reflections. This section of the interview will be focusing a lot more on reflections and then Amina's poem as well. But just to start off, Winnie, your reflection touched me deeply. The way that you articulated your experience of being a Black social worker in the practicing world, it was sad. It wasn't surprising that those experiences are similar to others, and it will probably be similar to mine, even though I'm not in social work yet. You made a powerful point about the people oppressed by white privilege understand the power of the social worker. I wanted you to elaborate on this for me, please.
Thanks for your question, Diana, and hopefully I'll give you a full answer. I think that at its heart, social work is about interacting with people, and these interactions should be collaborative and empowering, yet there's that undeniable power imbalance that as social workers we predominantly support people from disadvantaged backgrounds and marginalised groups, and we have a legal basis to fulfil our duties as a professional expert in people's lives. This power imbalance exists without even acknowledging the possibility of experiencing racism as someone who accesses services. So the idea that whether consciously or unconsciously, there is a bias with stereotypes and assumptions affecting these interactions, not only because you may be poor, experiencing mental health problems or addiction issues, but also because you're non-white. And the idea of white ideology and racist beliefs influencing what is acceptable or appropriate within the context of child welfare, the likelihood of detention under mental health legislation or imprisonment for an offence. And as social workers, if you're not typically interacting with a diverse range of people outside of work and are not having conversations about race and racism, surely these racist beliefs can go unchallenged. So as a Black woman, I know exactly what it's like to be different, to be the other, and to experience that as being less than. And that's something that I continually draw and reflect on, and that guides my interactions with people, because I want to be able to show that understanding and empathy. And I have come to question how focused people remain on anti-racist and anti-discriminatory practice post-qualification, especially in certain areas where there is that colour blindness, where there's little acknowledgement of issues on race and racism within society, let alone social work and organisations. So for me, anti-racism is as much about practice as it is about creating a positive and supportive working environment for all social work employees, irrespective of their colour.
Thank you. I don't know what I can add to that. I feel like that was whole in itself, and thank you. As I said earlier, I was really touched by your submission, because I am a Black woman and I've experienced a lot of your experiences. So it was touching, and it kind of brought a tear to my eye, but I didn't tell you that. There was no tears out of my eyes. But next we have Amina, and Amina submitted a poem, and this poem was absolutely amazing. Once again, I was able to relate to it. I think this whole book I relate to. It's like my whole life in one book, and I just love it. But your poem was stellar. I truly connected to it, and your poem interlinks with Winnie's reflection so well, because you're talking about microaggressions, you're talking about the ways that people treat you. But a lot of the times I tend to think, are microaggressions really micro because their impact seems so much bigger than what we give it credit for? That's my own reflection of microaggressions. I don't tend to think they're micro, but you started in your poem that there are times where, you stated in your poem that there are times where you lose hope and you feel uninspired. And I just kind of wanted to delve into that idea. What is keeping you going, although you continue to get burnt with no help in sight?
Thanks, Diana. And 100% agree that microaggressions aren't quite as micro as the name suggests. But I think what's quite interesting is probably I experienced much more overt racism when I was growing up. So it's quite interesting to then reflect more on microaggressions. And actually, there was racist graffiti and vandalism on a regular basis when I was growing up. So it's quite interesting to then kind of come to university, study, interact with very different people, and start to think, actually, I'm not experiencing racism in the, or not feeling like you were experiencing racism, certainly in the same way, and then starting to notice different kinds of racism, or thinking more about othering, which is what I reflect a lot on within the poem. And sometimes it is really difficult to obviously stay upbeat, but I am quite a positive person, and I think lots of things that I tend to really focus on when I do feel like I'm losing hope is positive quotes. So there's a few that I really find valuable. So for me, I'll just stick to one because there are so many. But Maya Angelou says, "We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated." And I really love that one. And I think it just allows you to kind of take a step back and think a little bit more about the fact that just because you protect yourself or you don't respond to everything, which in the past I have and then felt really burnt, it's okay to kind of give yourself a bit of time to have some support. And I just want to give out a shout out to a couple of my colleagues who are massive supports, who are here today. So I can see Catherine Witt and Philippa Geddes are both on watching this today, and they are massive allies. And I think it's really important to be able to rely on people who support you when you do lose hope. And also it was really nice to obviously be a part of this book and read so many of the incredible things that people have written, which also feels really inspiring when as a collective you can also feel that actually other people are with you and feel some of the pain that you've experienced. And as you already said articulately, Diana, that actually you resonated with so much of what's in it, and equally the bits that I've already read, I can really feel that connection with everybody.
Thank you so much. And I think one of the key things there is about community, creating that community around yourself, because these are difficult times. And I guess when I was reading your submission, it was where you were speaking about you were looking for someone to help, to protect you in that moment, to be able to lean on, and you weren't able to find that. And I think that's scary because a lot of the times we tend to think that we're alone. And I guess this event is showing that we're not alone. This book is showing that we're not alone, but also being able to build those communities and build those groups and allies like you suggested is what we need to be doing. And I think it's absolutely incredible. Thank you. Next, I want to talk to Rachel. I really loved your reflection because you took us on the journey of being a social worker, but also with the lens of being a mixed heritage woman. One of the key quotes that I resonated with was when you said, the feeling of being different is always with you. And I guess when I read that, it was very haunting when something's always with you. It doesn't really sound that great. It doesn't, maybe I'm pessimistic and I went to something really negative, but the idea of, the idea of being different, always being with you, can be looked as a bad thing or a good thing. But essentially, I wanted to ask you, how did you come to accept yourself and your identity as a mixed heritage woman? And how did this impact your social work practice?
Thank you for asking. That's a really good question. I mean, my journey is still going, to be fair. My piece is a very personal piece about how I've experienced my own life and how I've been exposed quite heavily to my white British heritage and not so much my other side of my heritage through lack of kind of relationship. And I think that has been a quite painful part of me. And I think it's been quite easy for me to kind of be exposed to white privilege in that way, because I think there's been a lot of people as I've been growing up as a professional that hasn't really noticed or said anything, or it hasn't really come to the forefront. But growing up in a situation where it was noticed, I was targeted on different sides of the coin, different sides of my heritage, I suppose, from different angles. It was quite painful to put my hand up and say, actually, no, this is who I am. And I think I tested the water quite a lot around, trying to say and be open about who I was. And it was never really received very well. And I live in a white British county. Diversity here is very difficult, because it is really difficult. And I think it was only when I became a parent myself did I realise the full extent of the seriousness of what identity truly meant for you. So it was easy for me to just block it and kind of say, that's okay, that doesn't matter. But the minute there was somebody else that I felt, actually, I don't want my children to be ashamed or not know, or I want them to be proud of who they are, and I want them to know about themselves. So I think it was only at that point did I really see how important identity was for me. So kind of moving through my professional career and my family and my friends, I've always been supported by my family for who I am, but they didn't understand because of their white British heritage. They didn't understand what I needed. And I think in my social work, voice of the child and life story has really resonated and been imprinted. So any work that I do with young people, I make sure I record everything. Working in child protection, if you've done work with newborns, I always record, what they were like, who came to see them, all those things that they might not know later on if you're separated from birth family. Because I think that is the real crucial part. Those are the questions, aren't there? It's what happened? Who was there? Who am I? Where have I been? And I think that really sits with me in my practice because of my experiences of not knowing. So I want to be able to support our young people who I work with in our areas to kind of know who they are, because the damage that can be done just through searching and being connected can be so crucial and critical to somebody's well-being. So I think, moving forward, I'm still on my journey. And when this came out and Wayne sent this out looking for people, I felt it was time for me to accept fully and tell the world, this is who I am actually, and I'm proud of it. And I want to be a part of something that make some change in the world. So I think the journey is still ongoing, but I think I'm ready for that and I've embraced it. And I think that's only going to impact positively on the children, young people that I work in practice.
Thank you. And what you just said at the end there is absolutely key. When you're able to reflect and go on a journey of self-growth, understand yourself, you will ultimately be able to understand the people that you work with even better. And I think that is so valuable because that's what we want to do. We want to be able to connect. We want them to be able to connect to their identity, because we can't ignore the impacts that identity have. And reading all three of your submissions, for me, highlighted how important identity is in different ways, because identity looks so different for everyone. And I guess that's what was so beautiful about your submissions. So thank you so much. I absolutely loved it and I enjoyed it. And as I said earlier, everyone, please get the book so you can understand the way that I'm feeling. Okay, so the next group that we're going to speak to is Lorraine and Farah. Please may you introduce yourselves, starting with Lorraine.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Singlehurst. I'm a social worker in Northamptonshire, predominantly with mental health. You're doing a fantastic job, Diana, I have to say. But, I'm so pleased to just be part of this, anthology. I'm of the mindset of what's already been said, that you have to dip in and out. Because when I was reading it, I was just felt really, really heartbroken on some things that I was reading, and so enlightened with others. I think this is it's fantastic to be part of. So thank you.
Thank you. Mara, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Farah Khan. I'm a principal social worker in Leeds, and I also co-chair the National Principal Social Work Network. And I've got to say, I feel quite in awe every single person here, because you know, I've read the book and different bits several times over, and then kind of being on the panel and being with all of you, I'm quite, it leaves me excited for the future, especially, you know, kind of listening to how or seeing how you're managing this, Diana, and Omar as well. My hat goes off to you, and quite excited about social work of the future. I wish I had your courage when I was studying social work, so it makes me really excited.
Oh, thank you. And I'll say thank you on behalf of Omar too, who's currently doing the tech. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. And I guess being able to connect with all of you is really incredible. And I think you guys don't realize the impact that you're having on us, even though like we're here talking and I'm hosting. That doesn't take away from how impactful it was to me as a student. And I think you all need to realize that it's left a long-lasting impact on me. And as I said earlier, I did shed some tears. That was for real. But I guess when I was reading your submissions, for me, I was thinking about mental health, and that was the theme here. And I guess we've already kind of touched on it, identity. We've touched on, you know, the pain, the sense of belonging, XYZ, and the journey that you go on and how it's always ongoing. I think for me, it's the idea of how do we manage our mental health when we have so much on our plate, when we have so much to do, and, you know, we're constantly fighting. Do we even care about our mental health? Does society care about our mental health? Because when we look at statistics, it's not doing great. And I think that's scary. And I think that's something that needs to be highlighted. So when I read your submissions, that's what was key to me. Lorraine, your reflection was entitled A Closed Door. That stood out to me from the get-go for several reasons. But one of them was the way that you highlighted the lack of action from organizations and those in leadership roles. I guess my question, although it might seem a little bit difficult, but I want to hear your thoughts and feelings on this. What will it take to get those organizations and leaders in social work to give up that privilege that you were talking about in your submission? What do you think needs to be done?
I guess when I sort of wrote the piece, it was before Wayne was asking for submissions for the anthology. I felt as if I hadn't, at the point where when I wrote it, I had nowhere else to go. And because I was on Wayne's link, I sent that to Wayne because I felt as if I had nowhere else to go with the feelings that I felt within my organisation. So to answer your question, I think, you know, organisations are made up of people. And, you know, they have to be willing. And I think that without that willingness, the same way as I was willing, or, you know, I was brought up here in Northampton with an English education, and I had to be willing to learn my own history. They also have to learn to understand what that privilege is. And I think that at the moment that they probably are not able to acknowledge what that privilege is. And maybe if there was some mandatory, you know, ongoing training, competence based, so they had to prove that the people higher up in social work could actually demonstrate that they understood what this privilege is, and they could identify it and put it into practice. And maybe only then will they be willing to change the organisation that they're within.
Thank you. I completely agree with what you're saying. And you know what, it sounds like such a big thing to do, but at the same time it doesn't. And I guess what I would ask is, all of these experiences, all of these ideas, all of the closed doors that you do face, all of these barriers, how has that affected your mental health?
Initially, to be fair, I think that what I was dealing with was trauma. This wasn't like, you know, I couldn't blame the organisation for the whole thing. This was an accumulative response within me over years and years of feeling like this. and obviously George Floyd's death, you know, publicly just brought it out into the open. I experienced some emotional burnout as a result, if I'm honest, you know, because I think that that was inevitable. I think that when you believe that you're working within an organisation that you feel as if it's safe, because they talk about diversity, but actually when you are met with a closed door, it's a traumatic experience. It's a traumatic experience. But what I had to do is, which is why I put it on paper, because that was part of my healing, to be able to put my thoughts on paper, recognise what I was feeling, but also to recognise that my role as a mum of 3 with teenage people within the house, my concern was about their mental health. Yeah. First and foremost, my concern was about them, and I needed to connect with the people that were in my household to ensure that their mental health was as stable as it could be, with what we were seeing very openly in public within our streets and what they were experiencing in their everyday lives. So that became my focus, was my children.
Thank you for sharing. As I've said before, a lot of what you said resonated with me. I think mental health is something that we definitely need to be acknowledging, because as someone said in the chat, and I completely agree, experiencing racism is trauma inducing. You can't get away from that. And we need to be thinking about our own mental health and those around us, like you spoke about your children. And thank you for sharing, honestly, thank you. Farah, you wrote 2 poems in this book, and I love them both. But in your poem, Listen to Your Heart, you touched on the importance of self-care. And I think, you know, that links so well with mental health. Through the experiences that you faced of racism and discrimination, how has the act of self-care been something, has the act of self-care been something that came easily to you, or was it something that you kind of had to work on?
So before I answer that, I think, you know, it takes incredible courage and strength to share something personal. So, and I want to say that, Lorraine, thank you, because I think there is no stronger person than somebody who exposes themselves. And I think that was, I wrote the poems before, you know, Wayne got in touch about the idea for this book, and quite humbled by asking to contribute. But it's something that I've always struggled with, and I think the impact of racism, and you know, I raised my children through the 9/11 years, and the impact on a Muslim family following that, and holding them through that, and then more over the past year with the pandemic and with the murder of George Floyd. And I thought, oh my God, not again. I just can't face having to have the conversations, because behind the conversations there's lived experiences. I've got adult children, I've got a grandson, and I just don't want to go there. And I think as a leader I also feel responsible. So hearing that, Lorraine, you know, I feel responsible, and I've been there, and I think and I continue to be there, and I think, what can I do to be different? How can I listen differently, and how can I influence and make changes? So all of that comes with a huge responsibility, and so writing, for me, poetry, you know, something I'm not very good with words or articulating myself, but I find poems easier to share how I'm feeling at a particular time. And that poem was the internal conversation I was having with myself, because you see leaders that are very strong, and what they portray. And I think in particular, you know, I'm a Pathan woman, I'm a South Asian woman of Pathan background, and you know, the experiences of other colleagues resonate with me, you know, that it's hard to be yourself and be vulnerable because of the additional scrutiny and the additional expectations, and I used to always feel I put that on myself, but actually over the past couple of years I've realized I don't put that on myself. It's what others put on me, and how others make me feel, and how racism makes me feel, and embedded racist ideas and values and microaggressions and behaviors make me feel. So that internal conversation about being honest about actually it's okay that if I prioritize my self-care and look after myself, that doesn't make me a weak leader. And if I share that, and so that's where that idea came from, and that's a constant struggle. And I still have that, you know, I still have that about taking a lunch break, or saying I'm not okay, actually, you know, I'm struggling with this, or that actually, you know, calling it out, saying that actually I wasn't comfortable with what you said there, or what was said in front of me, and the impact that that's having on me. And so self-care, I think it's really hard to do. It's additionally harder in this over the past year, and then that's kind of multiplied in layers by your gender, by your ethnicity, by your you know, by the expectations on you. And I think that that's overlooked sometimes, the additional layers of that. So I think we have to champion self-care and be honest, and that it doesn't make you weak. And I feel Zoe's piece in particular, you know, and I had the privilege of being a social worker with Zoe a long time ago, and you know, it resonates with me about that, other people thinking you don't belong somewhere, and you know, having to kind of earn your place. And I've realized it's been a long journey for me. I'm 53, but actually, you know, I have earned my place. I deserve to be a principal social worker. I deserve to lead. It doesn't matter if I can't spell and I'm dyslexic. It doesn't matter if I speak a certain way, or you know, express myself a certain way. I deserve that. And to this day, I think one of the biggest things for me has been is that fantastic people who I've never met in person, like Wayne, like Shabnam, like the work that Siobhan does, and people reaching out and actually, you know, supporting and connecting and recognizing strengths in each other, because this is so sad that we still have to have these conversations. And the book, for me, I've kept a copy for my grandson. He's 4 and he's beautifully blended of lots of different backgrounds, and you know, I want him to have that copy when he grows up, because I think what a lovely collective of stories, and I want him to look at that and think that was then, it's all right now. And that's what I hope for. But you know, that was kind of my inspiration, of just those expressing that internal dilemma.
Thank you so much. Everyone is saying how, just saying everything that you said was amazing, and they're very moved by what you said, and I'm moved by what you said. As you said, going back to what Zoe said and what you just said, it's about feeling and knowing that, you know, you've earned your position, you've worked hard, you deserve to be there, but also, you know, being able to say no sometimes when you need to, you know, take a break, or you need to look after yourself. I think that is the most important thing as well. Thank you, Lorraine and Farah, for this conversation. It's done more than you think, because I do need to take that information for myself too. I do need to put that in my life, and I will try to. I will. So thank you. Next, we have Chris, Robin, and Irene. Please, may you introduce yourselves, starting off with Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Parker. I'm a youth offending social worker, originally from the US. I've been here about 6 years now. Certainly didn't start off in youth offending, but that's where I've ended up at the moment. I'm just sitting here listening to everyone, and I'm just amazed. I almost feel like this should be an audio book, and everyone should be reading their pieces as well, because just hearing people discuss like how this book and this time period we're going through has impacted everyone. I honestly felt alone, even though I knew I wasn't. I did, and it wasn't until I read the book, and now that I'm here, that I realized like I've got a whole new family now. So yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing.
Thank you. I think you've just literally lit a spark. We need an audiobook right now. I've already volunteered myself, so we need to do it. But thank you, thank you. Next, could Robin introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Robin Sen. I'm a lecturer in social work at the University of Dundee. I also want to say, Diana, you're doing a grand job, admirable job as chair. The other thing I wanted to say about the publication, I'm really honoured to be part of it. I've not been part of another publication like it and doubt I ever will be again. And I just want to pay tribute to Siobhan for having the idea, and for Wayne and Siobhan for bringing it to fruition in such a brilliant way. I think the best thing I can say about it is that when I saw it, I thought, why has no one had this idea before? And I think that's the sign of a really great idea that's been really brilliantly executed. So well done to them, and well done to all of the other contributors.
Thank you, thank you. And I'm glad everyone is here and that the event is going so well. Next, could we have Irene introduce yourself, please?
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. So I'm Irene Mano, and I'm practice learning tutor at Anglia Ruskin University. Really great to be here tonight. And yes, Diana, you're doing such a fabulous job. I work quite closely with social work students, with social work practice educators, and you know, what we're talking about today, sort of being people of color and having this opportunity in this book to really sort of express ourselves is something that we all sort of longed for, I think, and you can see the appetite from people, and it was really great just to contribute from a reflective perspective. So I actually say to Wayne, do we need to provide references? And it's like, well, no, you know, you can choose how you want to present your story. So I think that sort of a reflective piece was really great. And I did something on having been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer and managing that during the pandemic, as well as all the other issues around the Black Lives Matter movement too.
Thank you, thank you. And that links in so well with me discussing what the theme is for this group, for this section. And I simply put 2020. And the reason why is because what I was getting from this section was so many different reflections, but really empowering reflections of people's journeys throughout 2020. And of course, the whole book is essentially people's reflections, but I don't know, I connected to these three in a different way. I feel like I connected to all of the submissions in slightly a different way. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about it. You will connect to everything differently. So starting off with Robin, your submission is called Where Now? Social Work and Social Work Education in the Slipstream of the Black Lives Matter movement. You speak about George Floyd's murder and how that affects you, how that affected you personally, but also my question essentially is, where do we go from here? Could you touch on how social workers can challenge, how social workers can challenge the racist state policies and practices that affect some of the most disadvantaged people in society? Because I think that's key. A lot of people are at a big disadvantage. Could you talk a little bit about that and about your essay, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try. I want to start off by trying to address a slightly different question, which is why we need it as an anti-racist strategy to address the impact on marginalised Black and minority ethnic populations. And I think part of the real value of the publication is around the really graphic and raw experiences that people have had in social work and academia, these institutions that we might have expected on a personal level would be at the forefront of anti-racism and accepting of Black and minority ethnic people and promoting them, haven't been. So I think there's a real legitimate focus there. And I think the advancement of Black and minority ethnic social workers and academics is important and can be transformative. So I don't want to dismiss that. But I also think we need to be careful about assuming there's an automatic connection between those things and better anti-racism within social work more generally for the people that we work with and within society. And if I can draw an analogy, we now have a number of black and brown faces in high places within government. Not enough, particularly black faces, but we have them there, the likes of Kemi Badenoch, previously Sajid Javid, Priti Patel, and yet we have a Prime Minister that's engaged in overtly racist discourse to a far greater degree than recent incumbents of that post, a government that's engaged in racist discourse and enacted policies that, to be generous, may have a racist underpinning. So if we apply that to social work, I think we need to be thinking about not just policies within local authorities and universities, important as those might be. We also need to think about things like the age assessment of asylum-seeking minors, no recourse to public funds, and the treatment of families like that. How do we address those? I think these sound like massive questions. How can we address them? But I think there are some really basic, simple things. Firstly, there are individuals and organisations doing great work. Project 17, Social Work Without Borders, lots of organisations locally, often on a shoestring, doing brilliant work. So I think others, if they can't do that work through time or because they don't have the ability to say publicly various things, can support those agencies, can promote their work, can raise these issues. So we can talk about these issues more. Secondly, in terms of the leaders of our profession, I think there's been some really positive and genuine, I'm not doubting their genuineness, statements by social work leaders about their commitment to anti-racism. But it's perhaps the easier thing to talk about the need for social workers to be anti-racist and for local authorities to be. It's a harder thing for them to be able to challenge government. And I think they need to be articulating that things like no recourse to public funds have a racist underpinning. And if the government doesn't intend that those policies do have a racist underpinning, then they need to look at them and consider them. The third thing that I'd say is, in terms of this, we need to have difficult conversations about race and ethnicity in the UK, the legacy of empire and the impact of on that of social work, the impact on immigration policies. And I think these are difficult and painful discussions to have, but I think we need to have them, and that means finding a discourse that allows us to have them and to engage with people of significantly different views. And the final thing I'd say on that means we need to find a language that we can use to have these discussions and not just talk about words and language that we can't use. And if we don't manage to develop that discourse, then the reality is we're going to have a similar situation to what we've had in the past on various issues, where people retreat into themselves and we talk past each other or we don't talk at all. So I think all of those three things are real practical things that we can be asking for as individual social workers, students and researchers, which I think would start to hopefully make progress on the structurally racist policies that I talk about in the essay.
Thank you so much. And I really love the way that you were able to, you know, highlight that it doesn't have to be out of this world, you know, the scale is 100 type of project that no one can do on an individual level. And sometimes people tend to think that, and it disconnects them from what's going on. The fact that you're able to bring it down to the basics, I think that's important, because basics build foundations. And as you said, we need to be working on that and we need to be building it. And people in the comments are completely agreeing with you. And I agree also. The words that you spoke are literally invaluable. And thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so the next person we have is Chris. Chris, your reflection was entitled 2020 Perfect Vision. In this reflection, you share with us your thoughts and feelings from March through to December 2020. And essentially, my question is more around, what was 2020 like for you? How can you sum it up? Because you do speak about it in your reflection, but I want to hear it from you. And also the second question, and I think this is probably my favorite question, is in September 2020, you wrote that you were reminded of why you become a social worker, why you became a social worker. And I want you to kind of expand on this. Let us in on that wavelength of yours.
Yeah. Wow, what was 2020 like for me? Oh my gosh. Wow, to put it all in a nutshell, it was a roller coaster. Yeah, it was a roller coaster. Although I have met a lot of people here and I have a lot of professional colleagues, this journey certainly was something I was doing on my own. I felt that way because I couldn't reach out to family in the way that I normally do. And we had to sort of get used to this sort of virtual way of connecting with people, which my mom finally did after so many years. But I think for me, it was about sort of the reality of how COVID impacted Black and ethnic minority groups, and also the untimely death of George Floyd. It all became a perfect storm, and it took this kind of paradigm shift in order to sort of move things in a direction that I'm really glad to. It seems like we're sort of snowballing at the moment. So for me, 2020 just, it was an awakening. I know that word woke has been mentioned a couple of times. It was an awakening for me. You know, I personally didn't know George Floyd, like many of us didn't. But I have to say, you know, when I heard he had passed, you know, looking at it, you know, from someone from the States here, I think what blew my mind is I was also, you know, aware of COVID, and I was absolutely terrified, and I'm still a bit anxious about it. And I wanted to protest because that's normally what I do. You know, even when I was in uni, I dealt with microaggressions like you wouldn't believe, even from professors challenging, you know, many things that I've discussed, because I was basically the only Black male in the classroom, and especially in grad school. So protest was big for me. Making a statement, getting people organized is big for me, but I was just too anxious to do it. And I felt like when he passed, I wanted to do something that actually sort of encapsulated why I became a social worker, but also to acknowledge, you know, we as people, you know, we're still fighting for something that clearly, you know, we're talking genetics here. We're talking things that none of us have any control over. And, you know, we're such brilliant people. We're coming up with vaccines and cures to all these illnesses, but we don't have a cure for racism and discrimination and oppression and all the isms that, you know, this book speaks about. So I felt like after he passed, when September hit, for some reason, you know, after trying to talk to people at work about this, after, you know, sort of trying to make people feel uncomfortable and that discomfort of what it's like to deal with institutionalized racism and oppression at my job, you know, by giving presentations and things like that. September, I can't even tell you what actually happened. But I realized that alone feeling that I had felt throughout the entire sort of change in season, it was really weighing down on me at that time. And I realized that I needed to kind of step up and be that person that I wanted to be when I was in, you know, uni and grad school for social work. And I've always wanted to champion people who are the most vulnerable. But I was among one of those vulnerable people as well. And I think that's what kind of turned things around for me, is that, you know, I realized why I came into this, because we're necessary, we're needed. We do share stories. We do. We can show people through modeling, through our work, through what we do, how we care for people, that we matter, despite what race we are, what gender we are, etc. And I just felt like that was something that at that point I guess I got a boost, if you will, of energy. As hard as everything else was, I just felt like I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep fighting. I mean, I could tell you all many other stories of experiences I've had in terms of police and racism and that, but I can say to you that I'm still willing to fight. I'm going to keep fighting no matter where I'm at. And I just feel like now, like I said, I feel like I'm not alone. There's an army here. So it's something that I'll do until the end, and hopefully pass this on to future social workers and maybe become a leader myself, as many of you on this panel are.
Can I just say that you're already a leader, and thank you for sharing all of that with us. And I guess, you know what, I connect with what you're saying so deeply about being alone and feeling alone. It absolutely eats me inside, and I just feel like I just can't continue, and it really does affect my mental health. And I can understand how that feels. And me and Omar have spoken about it. I've spoken to Siobhan about it as well. That feeling of, you know, being alone, out of place, being an outlander. It's not the greatest feeling in the world, but you deserve to be a leader. You are a leader, definitely. And thank you for sharing what you just shared with us. Have a look at the comments. People have shared their thoughts as well. Next, we have Irene. You shared a powerful and personal reflection about finding out you had a rare type of cancer, but also how you lost loved ones to COVID during this time. And I guess what I wanted to ask from you was, what are the key things that you want people to take away from your submission when they read it? Because there were so many things that I could pick on, but I feel like I want to hear from you. What do you want people to take away? What do you want them to be left with?
Yeah, thank you, Diana. I think there was so much as well, even for me. And when writing that reflective piece, it was quite therapeutic, because somehow it gave me the opportunity to talk about things that were really sort of important to me. And the most important thing for me that sort of resonated throughout, and something that you've already started speaking about, Diana, is the importance of how we make others feel. And so I found myself in a really strange world where I was diagnosed with this type of cancer that I could never have imagined. But those feelings of fear, anxiety, you know, sort of delving into the unknown. And anybody that knows me knows I don't like a lot of the technical stuff, and then all of the scientific jargon and things that I then found I actually had to sort of research about to really understand what was there, and that the whole emotions that were encompassed for me in that process were so many. But the one thing that really helped me was how the consultants and everyone that really worked with me in my treatment and post-recovery made me feel. And that's something that I held on to. It gave me that bit of hope. And so, you know, we talk about motivational interviewing and all those other aspects of building relationships. And I had to reflect a lot on myself, going back to my practice and the students that I work to support, and just thinking about, how do I make others feel? How do I engage with them? How do I connect? And it fits so nicely with our strapline, doesn't it, for Ubuntu, the strapline for World Social Work Day and Social Work Month. That connecting, you know, sort of allowing others to have a say, because although I think I was a statistic in the sense that I am female, and they were telling me that most people that get diagnosed with mucoepidermoid carcinoma are male, predominantly white males as well. And I was thinking, you know, and I'm a Black female. And how did that happen? But they really sort of talked me through and allowed that opportunity for me to ask questions, but without them, you know, doing it in a tokenistic manner. So they built a relationship, and I will never forget, you know, they say to me, we're going to need you in this for you to get better. And so you have got to fight. We will do everything that we can to really support you, but you have got to sort of work through it. And it took me back to practice and how I was sort of there and working with the strengths that people bring to those encounters. Where do their strengths lie? How can I help them to find that bit of hope? And for me as well, I reflect a lot about family and sort of the family systems, and that how that helped me in that process. And as someone who's an immigrant, you know, I felt that I was so lucky because I've got family here and quite an extended family as well. So I was reflecting on, if this had happened, and for so many others, you know, that were experiencing the pandemic and maybe have other personal health issues, and they're alone, how isolating that must feel as an experience. And so it just drove me back and really grounded me. And I think this book as well is that community of people sort of working together for a common cause. And I think it will make such a massive difference. And so I feel really privileged to have sort of contributed that little bit in this book, which I hope will make a massive, massive difference. I think this is just the start. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your reflection and your experiences. This is a community. This is an army in a way. We're not alone. We are all in this together. And I guess what I love about everything that I've kind of read and being able to speak to all of you, it's really touched me in a way that you will probably never really understand, because this journey is a very hard one. But being able to hear your stories in just the little bits, and being able to hear what you have to say, for me personally, it's impactful. For me, it's what we need to be hearing. I don't want it to be a one-off type of an event. I want this to snowball, and I want this to kind of become bigger and greater, because there's so much more that we can do. This book is the first step, and I think, as people are saying in the chat, you need to get this book. I've said it, so hopefully you get it, because we're friends now. But I hope you get the book, because it is important. It is impactful. To me, it means so much, honestly, and I am so thankful to every single person that has came on today to speak, all of the contributors, to Siobhan, to Wayne, and to everyone that's watching. You guys are incredible. You're all telling me that I'm good at hosting, but honestly, the only reason why I feel so comfortable is because I feel like I connected to your stories. I feel like I know you a little bit, and I just wanted to know, and it came from like a genuine place. But for me, this book is 5 stars out of 5. No one can tell me otherwise. Like, it's my favorite book. I'm gonna send it to everyone and anyone. But I kind of wanted to end the event talking to our editors. Siobhan, could you go on to the last slide for me, please? To round this off with the editors, we've been able to hear the amazing stories, the reflections, and the journeys. We've been taken on a journey today. But I kind of want to bring it back to Siobhan and Wayne. And I guess there were so many different questions that I kind of wanted to ask you guys. But for me, I just want to know, what does this book mean to you? Because not only is it a beautiful book, it's so diverse inside, the outside of it. the fact that the font in itself is from a Black business in itself, like, I think it's amazing. And I think even looking at that picture, I don't know what a book process is like, but I really want to know what this book means to you. And how do you feel after hearing all of this?
But to be honest, Diana, I'm quite tearful. When Ella's choir was singing, I got a bit teary. I've got teary at various points, and it's because I've sat, I mean, you know, I do a full-time job training, so actually just getting the book together was really hard, and it was very often done at a night time. And I remember at times sitting in the early hours of the morning reading some of this material and feeling really tearful about it, but at other times laughing. You know, some aspects of it actually bring great joy, and it takes you on an emotional, to use Chris's analogy, an emotional roller coaster. And I went on that as the editor. But I think what it means to me is, for me, this is a book which is a gift to the profession from a fabulously talented group of contributors. And it's a book that every social worker should read. And as a publisher, for me, you know, we're a publisher that's based on the values and ethics of social work. And we wanted this book. I kind of had the idea of this book based on something I read many years ago that was called The Black Student's Voice. And it was a book that I read as a practice educator. And as a white practice educator, it stayed with me through all of those years. And I realize now that it's, you know, I think it was in the early 90s. It was such a long time ago. To me, it feels like not very long ago, but that's because I've got this hugely long career. But I felt like we needed something now. And all of the things that people have talked about, 2020, everything that happened, the murder of George Floyd, all of those things meant that we had to have a book that addressed these things. And I think it's a gift to the profession. But what I wanted to do for this book, I'm not a social worker from a global majority, a Black social worker. I couldn't bring that narrative, but what I could bring was, I saw myself as a curator of these stories, and I wanted to hold the preciousness of these stories in a book that was beautiful, that was a book that held these stories well. And so when you hold the book, the quality of the paper is a different quality of any textbook that you will have read. The quality of the print, the fact that, as Diana said, one of the things that we did was we made sure that, for example, the font design in here was designed by a designer who is a Black designer. We made sure that the whole book, all of the creativity in the book, all of the photographs come from designers of colour. We did all of that. It mattered a lot. I've tried to make the book beautiful in many ways, and I've tried to make the book price accessible to make sure that everybody can access this book. There shouldn't be any reason for anybody to not be able to pick this book up and read it and learn from it and use it in every single thing that we do. And so for me, that's what this book is. This book is a gift to the profession, and anyone who is here that can influence reading lists, I would say to you, get this on a reading list. This should be on every reading list for every single module, because there's something in here for every module of every social work training program. So for me, it's a gift to the profession. But on another level, anybody who buys this book, all of the profits from the book are going to the Social Workers Benevolent Fund. And I wanted to tell you tonight that even though tonight is the launch, just from the sales that we've had before the launch, there is so far, up to the end of last week, there will be £764.23 going to the Social Workers Benevolent Fund. So on many levels, this is a gift to the profession. And so what I want people to know is what this book can do for the profession. But that's because of every single contributor and the power of everything that people bring. And I hope that I've made you as contributors proud, as the publisher of the book, trying to bring it together in a way which is beautiful and does do justice to the contributions that you've made. And I'm getting quite choked about that, but I hope that I've done justice to what you did in bringing the book together. So that's from my perspective, Diana, and that's just a photograph of my daughter's bed. She's away at the moment at university, and so I've been using her bedroom in the middle of the night putting this book together, and that's all of the different versions and all the notes to myself about what I need to talk to Wayne about. And even the book in the middle, that was the first run and we change things after that. So this book now is the book to get, and it's gone for the second print run already because it has been such a popular book. But everybody needs to get this book. Please do buy it. Thank you, Diana, for doing such a wonderful job tonight as well. So thank you. And I'll hand over to Wayne.
Thank you. And yeah, just to echo that, Diana, you've done a fabulous job. And you're a natural, I would say, at this. I've seen you do this a few times, and you've been, you know, great every time. So well done. About Outlanders, for me, as I've put in the book, for those who've read it, I wanted to emulate the Good Immigrant book and also IC3, Black Perspectives, both books that I read a good few years ago now. And they are quite generic in terms of the Black and ethnic minority experience generally in sort of the UK. But those books have always been quite dear to me. And with some of the circumstances that I've outlined in the preface, everything just seemed to align really in terms of working with Siobhan, emulating some of the kind of format and things from those books and making it very specific to social work and kind of being I guess quite, you know, blinkered and focused as to what our vision was around the books that Siobhan had read previously, but then also the books that I had. We were also very fortunate to work with Riz, who was our designer. Somebody sort of via my network that I have put us in touch with Riz, and he designed the cover and the other images. And as you'll see, you know, they're all really kind of fitting and kind of appropriate for the book and so on. All very ethical. So for me, it just felt like everything kind of aligned, you know, and I'm just really pleased to have been part of it. And I hope that it will be kind of revered in social work for years to come. As has already been said, you know, myself and Siobhan see this as our gift to the profession. We're not looking to make loads of money out of it. You know, I've not got a kind of royalty deal or anything. But you know, it's something that hopefully when, you know, later on in our lives in retirement, we can look back on this period and feel that, you know, we've done as much as we can for social work and the sort of various hats that we wear. I think that's all I can really say.
Thank you, Wayne, and thank you, Siobhan. And thank you to all of the contributors. It was amazing. This book is amazing. Everyone should get it.